Hi there, I'm Dawn of the World, and today I'm going to be shining a light on Brook, his pre-pirate past, and why we might already know the name of his home island. To give you a bit of honest context, I've been in the One Piece fandom for a while, and anyone who's known me in the context of the fandom could tell you that I am a Brook fan. I've even gathered a few things over the years. I have this shirt for one thing, as well as an eater bag I've put together, the Soul King World Tour poster of course, and even his CD, which includes a ticket to his concert at Sabaody Archipelago. I have a Brook cup, the recent Wano Funko Pop figure, and the New York City Comic Con exclusive Funko Pop. I also have this candy jar. It used to be full of salt candy, but now it's filled with pins. I've even got a violin that I tried to learn how to play. I ended up using it as a prop in a short film that I wrote and directed. I have a plushie from a friend, a couple of figures, some stuff from the Tokyo One Piece Tower back when that was a thing and I was lucky enough to go, another bag that a friend designed on Redbubble, and a necklace or two. There are a number of Brook things that I don't have though, like this and this and these. But can I make a confession? I want them. In my non-material pursuits, I made plenty of posts back in my Tumblr days, as well as gifts and gift sets. Many gifts and gift sets in fact, to the point where if you Google Brook GIF, a number of the results were made by me. Among some of the people who must have come by my gifts this way is One Piece YouTuber Ohara, whose Brook analysis video includes 2 Brook related gifs made in my dodgy version of Photoshop back in the mid 2010s. So I'm Dawn and I like Brook, and now that we've established that, let's jump into the heart of the matter, even if he doesn't have one. Brook, as we all probably know, is the musician of the Straw Hat Pirates. They stumble across him while on the Florian Triangle, the sea full of nightmares somewhere between Water 7 and Sabaody Archipelago. After asking the most important and pressing question first, Luffy invites him to join the crew and he initially accepts. Of course, this is all too simple and he then rejects due to a number of reasons. It turns out, Brook hasn't had the best run thus far. At this point, his journey began little over 50 years ago, with the formation of the Rumbar pirates in the West Blue. After having to leave a dear friend at Twin Capes and promising they'd return, the Rumbar pirates embarked on an ill-fated journey across the Grand Line, which ended in the double tragedy of their initial captain contracting a deadly illness, and the fates of the rest of the crew being sealed in a bloody and poison-filled battle with other pirates. Brook dies with the rest of them but is reanimated as a skeleton after being lost in the fog for a year due to him having eaten the Yomi-Yomi, or the revived fruit, at an undisclosed moment earlier in his life. His bad luck isn't behind him, however, and he is adrift on the broken ruddered ship for many years in the Florian Triangle. And then, of course, the fact his shadow is stolen by Warlord Gecko Moria aboard Thriller Bark, a big-ass ship that sailed over from West Blue and has been terrorizing Florian Triangle for the past decade. Luffy gives this sad giant goth another, albeit deserved, ass beating. Brook's shadow is restored, and upon finding out Laboon, the whale friend of he and his deceased crew, is still waiting for him back at Twin Capes, his position within the Straw Hats is sealed. As we've established, when we first meet Brook, we're meeting a 9-foot-tall, living dead skeleton aboard a ghost ship on an ocean full of nightmares. It's pretty creepy. But it doesn't take us long to discover that he's actually kind of an idiot and not at all a threat. Out of the entire crew, a crew that includes Usopp, Nami, and Chopper, mind you, the person who screams the loudest at the sight of a ghost is the skeleton. I love it. No need to even mention all the jokes he makes about being dead. On top of all this, he's very sweet, loyal, encouraging, and protective of his crew. He can be quite inappropriate at times, and if you study Japanese and all its levels of politeness, you'll appreciate the humour of him saying rude things in a very polite way. And he's very unconventional, but it's all part of what makes him the ridiculous goofball of a character that he is. He's an incredibly lovable undead skeleton, and despite his towering physique and phantom-esque appearance, once you get to know him, he's not scary at all. until he is. All goofiness aside, Brook is still the skeleton of a man who once died, but came back from the land of the dead. He actually did glimpse the land of the dead for a short while, and notably after the time skip, he has become more in tune with the abilities that he gained. He can summon the chill of the underworld. I mean, that's pretty scary. It takes a lot to get him mad, but given his history, one of his instant berserk buttons is when any of his nakama are threatened or hurt. And Brook is not really the type of guy whose bad side you want to be on. While on the surface, Brook does look the scariest out of the crew, you only need to know him for a few moments to figure out that a little further down, maybe he isn't that scary. Deeper down, however, he's even more fearsome than his surface appearance lets on, and in my honest opinion, he potentially is the scariest person in the crew. And you know what? This is partially due to fear of the unknown. Brook is full of mystery. He even says so himself in a song. We know next to nothing about the first 38 or so years of Brook's life. For context, the next oldest crew member after Brook, not including Jinbei, who only joined recently, is Frankie, who's 36, a whole 2 years younger than Brook is when we see him at his youngest. Interestingly, we have been given an image by Oda of what Brook looked like as a child. In this image, his clothing appears tattered and his violin seems to have been broken and mended, suggesting more of a backstory. He also appears to be practicing his fencing sword style. It was featured briefly in the credits of Film Z and in the colour spread for chapter 726. Whether or not we'll actually see a Brook of this age during a flashback in the story is up to Oda, but I really hope that we do. There is one thing we know about Brook's pre-pirate past, however, and that information is given to us during one single panel in the story. According to this panel in chapter 489, long ago he was the leader of a battle convoy in a certain kingdom. This certain kingdom being somewhere in West Blue, in which the Rumbar pirates were formed. Now, things can vary slightly from translation to translation, so in times like these, it's best to consult the original source material, the Japanese manga, wherein Brook indeed says mukashi, long ago, toaru okoku, in a certain kingdom. I'm quite interested in Oda's choice of the use of the word toaru, certain. Like, this seems like an oddly specific choice, like a certain kingdom. Which certain kingdom, Oda? What are you hiding from us? So long ago in a certain kingdom, goe sendan, goe translating to guard, convoy, or escort, sendan translating to fleet, convoy, or group of ships. Dancho o tsutome, so he was serving as the leader of this particular convoy. The thing that particularly strikes me is the use of the word goe in the original Japanese version. This, I think, denotes that it wasn't just a run-of-the-mill battle convoy, but specifically one that was used to escort or guard someone or something. Since in the Japanese there seems to be a minor distinction between this and a regular battle convoy. Furthermore, before really looking into this whole battle/escort convoy business, I had kind of assumed that before his days of piracy, Brook had just stuck to his island and the convoy was a horseback thing, given the medieval vibes the word kingdom, as well as his fencing swordsman style, had denoted. However, the term goe sendan has an almost entirely nautical association, giving me the idea that Brook was a kind of marine type person. Therefore, Brook was travelling the seas already in some capacity during the first 38 or so years of his life as the leader of this convoy. He was likely quite well travelled within the West Blue. This actually makes a lot of sense in the context of Brook's character. Brook is mostly used for comic relief and an endless supply of panty jokes, skull jokes, skeleton scared of ghost humour, and witty yet insightful observations. And also whatever this is. However, he's a character easily overlooked because of these things, and he's demonstrated to know quite a lot more about the world around him than he lets on. From knowledge of ocean currents to that of legendary ghost ships. From faraway countries of samurai to the family histories of his own crewmates, Brook knows things. He sings and he knows things. The thing is though, he'll never go out of his way to talk about these things, and he'll only shed some light if and when they are brought up, and spends the rest of his time just kind of sharing a single brain cell with Luffy. So where did this man come from? What is the name of this certain kingdom? Well, I think we've actually already heard the answer to that, and it's an answer that lays way back during the Sabaudi Archipelago arc, which was the subsequent arc to Brook's introduction. Maybe you remember and you know where I'm going with this, but maybe you don't. It happens at the auction house, not long before the cow dung hits the fan, and is easily forgotten and overshadowed by one, the fact that the guy who was going to coat the Sunny just so happens to be, former first mate of the Roger Pirates, and two, by everything that then happens afterwards. Anyway, this little plot point's name is Byron. He is a young man described in chapter 501 by the auctioneer as being from a place called Taroa in the West Blue. Okay. Very interesting that Oda decided to give a specific country name and not just say somewhere in West Blue, but okay. He is further described as being from a distinguished family who can play any instrument. Alright, just because he's from the same part of the ocean as Brook and is described as being from a long line of musicians, doesn't mean they're from the same place. But let's take a look at Byron, shall we? Specifically, let's take a look at how he's dressed. So this musician, from a place called Taroa in the West Blue, is dressed in a waistcoat or vest, coupled with a cravat and a dark overcoat. Does anyone else kinda match that description? Is this not exactly how Brook and a number of the Rumbar pirates, a crew of musicians from a certain kingdom in the West Blue, were also dressed? I'm not suggesting that Byron and Brook are necessarily blood related, but all these factors are very much pointing towards the two of them being from the same country. Worth noting is that while Brook is present later in the auction house scene, at this point he is not shown up yet, so we don't get to see any kind of reaction from him upon the name of his potential homeland being mentioned, or seeing a person from there about to be sold into slavery. Lucky for Byron, I'm pretty sure he manages to escape amidst the chaos that ensues, so who knows where he is now. Maybe he's back in Taroa. Whether or not Byron will have a role to play later in the series, I'm uncertain. But the thing I am certain about is that, just like Byron, Brook and a number of the Rumbar pirates were from Taroa. And while I did come to this realization independently, I'm not the only one. I scoured the internet for days and I ended up finding one other person on Reddit and one other person on Tumblr who made the same observation, so nice catch, guys. But the thing is, I've seen basically nobody talking about this. I decided to go a little further and look up Taroa's namesake. Upon googling it, by far the most common result is the Maori word for southern royal albatross. They've got quite a few of these guys down in New Zealand, I guess. There are a few other things that have the name Taroa, however. A New Zealand-based sculpture of a Taroa, a ferry which was in operation from 1925 to 1980 that was also in New Zealand. I guess they really like these birds down there. But there is one other thing that uses this name, and that is a genus of leafhopper, which I don't think has anything to do with the albatross aside from maybe being a tasty snack. In the insect world, the Taroa is one of many genus of leafhopper. Like, seriously, how many of these things does nature keep churning out? I thought there was like 8 different types of insects in the world, but guess what? There's more than 8! It's quite difficult to find information on the Taroa leafhopper in particular, since there's all these other types, but I think the main thing here is that the Taroa is a leafhopper. And we've seen leafhoppers in a colour spread. That colour spread being for chapter 503, just 2 chapters after Taroa has been mentioned. We have what appear to be a group of leafhoppers, or Taroa, playing a violin chorus with Brook, while also being dressed similarly to him and wearing his symbol on their hats. Oda seems to like sprinkling vague hints into his colour spreads on occasion, and whether or not this is one of those occasions or I'm just looking too deeply into the entire thing, I'm not too sure. But through the existence of Byron, it's already been strongly hinted that Brook is from a place called Taroa, which can also mean leafhopper, which makes this colour spread just 2 chapters later of him performing with a group of leafhoppers kind of interesting. Furthermore, I don't think Byron and Brook are the only characters we know who originate from Tarawa. For a long while, I've suspected that Lafitte of the Blackbeard Pirates is from the same place as Brook. For one thing, Lafitte is also from a unspecified country in the West Blue. For another thing, he has a similar sense of style to Brook, also equipping a cane and a top hat. The possibility of him being from the same place as Brook also makes me wonder if he too keeps a blade concealed within his cane. Lastly, while Lafitte doesn't seem to be a musician, he does tap dance. Like music, dance is a form of creative art that requires a good sense of rhythm, and tap dancing specifically is very musical. As with Byron, I'm not sure if Lafitte is related to Brook by blood, though there is a bit more of a resemblance here. However, when Lafitte was born, Brook had already spent about a decade adrift on the Florian Triangle, and whether or not these two are related or even from the same place remains to be seen. However, at this point, I think the chances of Brook being from Tarawa are almost certain, and the chances of Lafitte being from the same place as Brook are also highly likely. What we do know about Lafitte is that in his hometown he was a sheriff. Yes, he's described as such in Japanese too, who was widely known for using excessive violence and was driven out of his country for doing so. The big question I have is this: what happened in Tarawa? What was their escort convoy guarding, and why did the leader of this convoy, a convoy potentially made up of hundreds or even thousands of people, up and set sail as a pirate? That question kind of still stands regardless of whether or not Brook is from Tarawa. I'm now going to be stepping into some slightly speculative territory, so bear with me. I feel as though Brook may have been leading the guard/escort convoy for Tarawa's royal family. Furthermore, this makes me think that Tarawa is not aligned with the world government, or at least it wasn't during the time Brook acted as convoy leader. A couple reasons for this include a world government aligned country would likely have a marine presence leading their naval convoy, and Brook has never been described as having been a marine. As well as this, if Brook were the lead guard or escort of the royal family, and that royal family were of a world government aligned kingdom, Brook would likely have accompanied them to the Reverie a few times. As much as Brook knows more than he lets on and will only mention it if it becomes relevant, I think he would have mentioned having been to the Reverie by now if he had gone, unless he wants to hide the fact for some reason. And even if it isn't that, I still wouldn't be surprised if Brook is hiding something in his past, or at least omitting the fact. For all intents and purposes, Brook's life in West Blue is behind him, and he might be a very different person now from whoever he was as the leader of Tarawa's guard convoy. Another major reason I think Tarawa may not be a part of the world government is that a bounty was not put on Brook's head until he was well and truly established as a pirate captain. Him having left his post in Tarawa may well still be classed as treason, but if Tarawa wasn't world government aligned, the world government probably wouldn't really care about Brook's departure in and of itself until, of course, he started making problems for them as a pirate. Regardless of Tarawa's status in the world government, I wonder about the kind of person Brook was during his time as convoy leader, why exactly he became a pirate, the love of music that must have been present from early childhood, and if that music was encouraged or discouraged during his time in service. Stepping more into speculative territory again here in regards to the conditions under which Brook obtained the Yomi-Yomi no Mi, I think that Brook must have been very good at his job, and be it for his leadership skills, his music, or possibly a synthesis of both, whoever he was serving liked having him in their service. The crack in Brook's skull is shown to be a scar during his days as a living man, something that would have occurred before his days of piracy. It's very interesting that Oda has included this because that's a story right there that links back to Brook's pre-pirate past in his homeland. I imagine he would have sustained this injury not just before he was a pirate, but before he'd eaten the Yomi-Yomi no Mi during his time serving as the convoy leader. This would have been a serious injury. This would have nearly killed him, and being before he had his fruit, there would have been no funny talking singing skeleton, there would have been no coming back at all. I imagine whoever he was serving under might have stressed a lot over this. We nearly lost one of our best men. We need to make sure that this never happens again. We want him to work for us forever. And so they gave Brook the fruit and made him eat it as part of his duty. Because think about it. Who would choose to eat the Yomi-Yomi no Mi on their own terms? But for some reason, Brook really doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would have been like, oh yeah, I'll eat this. Which kind of makes me think he was made or pressured into doing so. which would be kind of messed up. It also kind of explains why he and the Rumbar pirates were aware of the mechanics of the fruit and pondered how it might soon kick in after they were all about to die. Furthermore, in a series with such an emphasis on freedom as One Piece, where people become pirates for the hope of freedom, can you think of a much bigger antithesis to that freedom than not being able to escape servitude even in death? As for what exactly happened to prompt Brook to turn to a life of piracy, I'm not entirely certain, but having been made to eat the Yomi-Yomi no Mi could have played a factor in this decision. Something I've noticed about the Rumbar pirates is that there seems to be two separate aesthetics going on here. There's kind of a cowboy aesthetic that Yorkie and around half the crew members wear, as well as a more kind of classy, elegant look that Brook and the other half of the crew members sport. Interestingly, the other musicians who form Brook's infamous quartet to solo moment are also dressed in the same style as Brook, rather than in the cowboy style. Is it possible in this case that the members of the Rumbar pirates were made up of people from two different places, or does the kingdom of Taroa have a synthesis of two very different styles coexisting? After all, in the case Lafitte is also from Taroa, he dresses in a similar style to Brook, while having had the very western or cowboy title of sheriff. This also makes me wonder if Moria was from Taroa. He's from the West Blue as well, and his dress style includes a cravat and an overcoat. And while one could argue that he might just be doing this for the aesthetic, the fact that his child design includes him wearing a pair of cowboy boots might be worth noting. The fact he's the villain in the arc in which Brook is introduced could be used for or against the possibility of them both being from the same place. But back to the Rumbar pirates for now. One possible option is that the Rumbar pirates were made up of survivors of opposing sides of a war, be it a war between two opposing nations, or even a civil war of opposing factions within the same kingdom. For whatever reason, the people who were doing the fighting on the opposing sides of this war decided to stop fighting and live life far away from the conflict of their homeland, out on the open sea. Yorkie says that all he asks is that the crew has a love for music, as though their past and what they did before forming the pirate crew were of no consequence and didn't matter anymore. It also makes me think that the members of the Rumbar pirates, including Brook, didn't have anything to lose at this point. Brook was well into his 30s. Did he have a family, loved ones, possibly even kids? Clearly something had happened by this point that caused him to come to the decision to leave his life as a convoy leader behind and become a pirate. The aspiration to make even a crying child smile is so pure and positive, which makes me think they had come from a situation that was anything but. Furthermore, at some point in Brook's flashback, there is an instance of infighting over something petty between two of the crew members, which is then punished. Captain Yorkie tells them, don't hold a grudge over something that's done with, it's shameful. And this is likely me looking too far into things, but it really feels like it could be hinting at a past, much larger scale conflict wherein the crew were made up of opposing sides in a war. As for Captain Yorkie, the fact that we didn't see a body and that his survival is even pondered makes me think that he perhaps survived and may still be alive out there somewhere. The sickness he and the other crew members were afflicted with strongly resembles tree fever, an illness Norland from the North Blue was able to cure 350 years prior. And were Yorkie and the afflicted members of the crew able to successfully leave the Grand Line via the Calm Belt, there is a chance they could have ended up in North Blue, where their ailments may have been treated. I've also seen a theory that they may have sailed to the Isle of Women on the Calm Belt and been treated there. The timeline even aligns close enough that Yorkie may have been the man a younger Elder Nyon fell in love with. There's also a theory out there that Yorkie may be Green Bull, given his tendency to wear green, the fact that tree fever may have turned him green, and his association with bulls. However, due to recent revelations, I think there is a more likely contender out there for the identity of this elusive marine admiral. There's also the possibility that for whatever reason Yorkie was secretly an antagonistic figure, and after surviving or curing his illness, the unknown pirate crew who attacked the remaining Rumbar pirates with poisonous weapons were sent by him. This would be a betrayal of enormous proportions, however, and I almost feel bad for even suggesting it. There's a lot more that could be said about Brook and his past, such as the unwavering loyalty he has for his captain in the present day, and the possibility of more of his past coming to light in the upcoming chapters of the manga, in the scenario he has to fight the CP0 while protecting Robin. But I'd like to know what you think. Be sure to give a like and subscribe if you're interested in any of my upcoming One Piece content. I'm Dawn of the World, and I will see you next time. Bye guys! Whoa.